everybody. I don't know about you, but that was Touch of Heaven is one of my favorite songs, so that was just great worship. I hope you guys are all doing well. For those of you who don't know me, I feel like I know all of you guys, but my name is Lauren. I'm super excited that all of you guys are here today. If you've been following the garden for a while, then you know that this is actually our first sermon series. And if you've been following Eric's promotion on Instagram, you've seen for a while that it's called Faith When. I have the privilege, though, of talking about faith when you have to wait. So waiting. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely don't like to wait. I'm definitely not the most patient person in waiting. So I wanted to get a sense in the room of how many of you guys also don't like waiting. So raise your hand if you hate waiting on the line at Six Flags. All right, we got a lot of hands there. This is an accurate picture of your fellowship coordinator, Brian, really upset waiting on the line to Six Flags. So I agree with you guys. Waiting is annoying. Nobody likes to wait. But because of that, actually today we are going to be walking through two different yet very similar stories of two individuals who had to wait in faith. So you guys might be familiar with this passage, but I want you guys to try to look at it with fresh eyes. Today we'll be in Mark 5, starting in verse 21. It says, "Now when Jesus had crossed over again by the boat to the other side, a great multitude gathered to him, and he was by the sea. And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name. And when he saw him, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly, saying, 'My little daughter lies at the point of death. Come lay your hands on her, that she may be healed, and she will live.' So Jesus went with him, and a great multitude followed him and thronged him." So here we meet the first person in our story, Jairus. Who is Jairus? Jairus is a rich and prominent ruler of the synagogue who is well known, but he's also this desperate, worried parent because his little daughter is dying. He finds Jesus in this crowd because he believes that Jesus can heal his daughter, and as a result, he falls at the feet of Jesus and begs for him to come. And what does Jesus do? He agrees and decides to go with him. I also want you guys to keep in mind throughout the story that this is happening with a multitude of people. I don't know if you guys can picture what a multitude of people looks like. So I dropped a picture on the slide. Yes, this is a SpongeBob reference, but it's a lot of people. So continuing on, keeping this in mind, now we're going to meet the second person in our passage. In verse 25 it says, "Now a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had and was no better, but rather grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, 'If only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well.' Immediately the fountain of blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of the affliction." So now we meet our second person in the story, the woman. One of the first things I noticed about this woman is that she didn't have a name. She was known by her issue. Her issue that she was bleeding for 12 years. How would you feel if your issue or area of healing you needed was how you were identified? I think sometimes in our wait, it feels like our issue becomes our identity. See, this woman, she spent all her finances, saw many physicians, and she did everything, but every time she tried something, it just got worse. Until she heard about Jesus. She heard about Jesus who could help her situation. And much like Jairus, they both pursue him in faith. They had faith that he could fix their situation. This woman thinks, all I need to do is touch the cloth of Jesus, and I will be healed. This reminds me of Hebrews 4, verse 2. It says, "For indeed the gospel was preached to us as well as to them, but the word which they heard did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in those who heard it." This verse, I've been studying Hebrews, this verse shook me. Because it's like, even in context of this woman, it's like she was waiting. She has been sick for 12 years, and she hears about the power of Jesus, but then she also pursues Jesus as an act of faith. Like, a lot of us hear about Jesus. I mean, a lot of you guys have been coming to the garden every week hearing about Jesus, but I want you to ask yourself, is it moving you towards action? Stop and think for a second. Let's just say this woman just heard about Jesus, but didn't decide to actually touch Jesus' clothes. What would have been the result? It's possible that her 12-year illness would not have been healed, but only progress. So I ask you guys, is there something that God is putting on your heart? Is there an area that he wants you to move from just hearing to an action of faith in your life? Continuing on with this story. In verse 30 it says, "And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that the power had gone out of him, turned around to the crowd and said, 'Who touched my clothes?' But his disciples said to him, 'You see the multitude thronging you, and you say, "Who touched me?'" Guys, let's think about that for a second. Like, you saw that picture? Jesus is surrounded by hundreds of people. Even the disciples are like, "Bro, Jesus, why are you asking that question? That doesn't make sense. There's so many people around you." And when I was studying this passage and thinking about how Jesus asked this question, I couldn't forget about who is left waiting throughout all of this. Jairus. See, remember, Jairus has a dying daughter at home. We read it at the start. Jairus gets to Jesus first. Jairus asks Jesus, and Jesus agrees to come with him. But what happens? Jairus is left to wait. Could you imagine what he's feeling? I don't know about you, but if I had a dying child at home and my only hope was this guy who agreed to come with me, I would be angry about seeing him stop and ask a seemingly pointless question like, "Who touched me?" in a crowd of so many. I assume it's like many of us when we're waiting on God. Let's be real here. There's a lot of emotions that can arise. Maybe while you're waiting on God, there's panic or fear. Maybe there's anger or even jealousy, or like me, you get anxious. Because not only did Jairus have to stop and wait for Jesus, Jairus had to stop and witness somebody else get their healing before he did. While his daughter is dying at home, Jesus in verse 34 is telling somebody else, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go home, go in peace, and be healed of your affliction." Jairus is left waiting. And not only that, but while this woman gets her healing in this verse, it says in verse 35, "While Jesus was still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house who said, 'Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?'" What if you have to wait on God for your healing? More so, what if you have to wait and watch others get healed before you do? Like, again, if I was Jairus, I'd be hurt and angry. I'd be like, "Jesus, see, it's because you didn't come with me fast enough. It's because you helped someone else. It's because you overlooked me." I've been there. I've been in a time on waiting on Jesus. My sophomore year seemed to kick off the brink of me dealing with anxiety. This season of my life, I call it the bleh phase because I couldn't describe to anyone exactly what I was feeling. All I knew is I needed God to give me clarity, and I wanted him to make it better. This is a time where I switched my major, and I felt like God was calling me to something different. And this past year has been another one of those years. I have found myself waiting on God to give me clarity about, specifically now, what he wants me to do in the future. And in the beginning of this year, I can't fully describe it to you all, but I felt desperate. The reason why we picked Touch of Heaven is because it's one of my favorite songs, because I've found myself praying through that song so many times this year. I've been desperate for a touch of heaven, just desperate for Jesus, just like Jairus, just like this woman, just like some of you. And sometimes it feels like you're getting to a point of asking why. Why, God, are you putting me through a waiting period? Why aren't you making it better? Why aren't you giving me clarity? Waiting is hard. But this is what I realized in my time of waiting. It's not necessarily the waiting period itself that's the issue, but it's how you wait. See, I realized I had not been waiting in faith. I had just been waiting. And it's in this waiting time that the enemy tries to knock your trust in Jesus. See, the real issue that I had was I was struggling to trust Jesus, to trust that he knew what he was doing, to trust that there was purpose in the wait. One of my favorite speakers and authors, Jackie Hill Perry, says this: if God is holy, then he can't sin. If God can't sin, then he can't sin against you. If he can't sin against you, shouldn't that make him the most trustworthy being there is? I'm going to say that last line just so it sinks in. If he can't sin against you, shouldn't that make him the most trustworthy being there is? See, in the time of waiting, I think the question we're really struggling with is, do we trust God? Do we trust his word? Do we trust that our waiting can be for a purpose? I realize waiting in faith is active. It can sometimes look like Jairus and this woman who have to push past a crowd and fall at the feet of Jesus. But Jesus also wants to remind you today, just as he did with Jairus, to not be afraid, but only believe. In verse 36, it says, actually, as soon as Jesus heard that the word was spoken, like as soon as Jesus heard people trying to discourage Jairus, he tells him, do not be afraid, but only believe. For many of you who currently might be waiting, maybe it's getting a job, maybe it's getting to the school you want, or finding the right person to marry, or maybe it's a season of anxiety or depression you want relief from. I say to you, do not be afraid. Only believe. Because look at what happens when Jairus does not waver in faith, but trusts Jesus. In verse 37, and he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw a tumult of those who wept and wailed loudly. And when he came in, he said to them, why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping. And they ridiculed him. But when he had put them all outside, he took the father and the mother of the child and those that were with him, and entered where the child was lying. He took the child by the hand and said to her, Tali Kumi, which is translated, little girl, I say to you, arise. Immediately the girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age. And they were overcome by great amazement. Immediately this girl arose and walked. She was healed by a measure of faith that her father displayed. See, what if Jairus listened to the people who came to him before and believed that his daughter was dead? Jesus is intentional. He had purpose in making him wait. Because Jesus did not only grow Jairus' faith, but all of those in the house who thought that the daughter was dead. Jesus is glorified, and everyone's faith is strengthened in the process. You know, sometimes I even wonder, why does Jesus kick certain people out of the room? And I definitely don't know for sure, but I wonder if there's power in having people in the room who are united by faith rather than their doubts. I don't know about you, but I would want to be in that room. I would want to have enough faith where Jesus would say, stay. Guys, scripture is so cool because only God could unite these seemingly different people together. This woman, afflicted for 12 years, Jairus, his 12-year-old daughter dying, both immediately healed once faith is put into action. See, on the surface, Jairus is this rich ruler and this woman is broken and unclean, yet both are brought to the same place because of their situation, because of their pain, because of their brokenness. They are both desperate, having to push people to get to Jesus. It's their desperation that brings them both to the feet of Jesus. Now, this might sound odd, but could it be that the most loving thing Jesus could do for you is let you wait? To let you wait so that your faith is strengthened, so that you too might be brought to a point of realizing that you need to come to the feet of Jesus. And guess what? You don't have to do that waiting alone. See, Jairus went and had faith on behalf of his daughter. We were made for community. There's faith in numbers. And we at the garden, we want to be a community that can strengthen one another. In displaying faith, you'll always have moments of wait. But you and I, we're here together. We're all different, yet the same, because we were all sinners. We are all broken people who were saved by a Father who loved us so much that he sent his Son to die for us. So we no longer have to bear any of it on our own. We, out of our brokenness, are brought to the same place. Only there can be a difference in our outcome in the end. And it's a question of, where are you going to put your faith? Friends, I ask you, are you going to have faith during the wait? And to be honest, I'm really not just talking about waiting in like your situations right now, like whether it's job or marriage or college or career or calling, provision, healing. Friends, I'm talking about the end goal. What about waiting with intention for Jesus to return? I know we talked a lot about waiting, but I implore you, if you haven't put your faith in Jesus, don't wait any longer. Make that decision today. And if you already follow Jesus and you're in a difficult situation, do what this woman and Jairus did. Trust God. Do not be afraid, but believe. Wait in faith and share it in community so you don't have to do it alone. I want to end with this verse before we sing. It's Hebrews 11, verse 6. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. I pray that all of you here would leave tonight seeking God in new ways, that your faith would be strengthened, that you will have faith during the wait. Let me pray for you guys. Heavenly Father, I thank you that you're with us in our struggle, God. I thank you that you see us, that you know us, that you're with us, God. Lord, I pray for each person here, God, that we would have faith during the wait, that we would be strengthened, God, that we would not be afraid, we would not be discouraged by what might come, God. Lord, I pray that you would reveal to us maybe some of the purposes you have in whatever waiting we're doing right now. But above all, God, I pray that we would be waiting with intention for your return. That we would live every day with this expectancy. We would live every day with this desperation for you and desperation for others to know about you. God, we thank you. We thank you for this community. We thank you for this time, Lord. And yeah, God, I just pray that you would bless the rest of this night.